Good evening, YouTube. On today's episode of Angry Four-Cylinder Therapy, we're going to learn how to do electrical repair the correct way. What seems to be a theme with Angry Four-Cylinder Therapy is I remember to start the video halfway through doing what I'm doing. So as you can see, some of these wires have already been repaired, and the proper way to repair wires is not with crimps or electrical tape. It is with solder, heat shrink tubing, and liquid electric tape. So, soldering iron, solder. You heat your wire from below. Wait till your iron gets nice and hot. You want to have the solder melting on the tip, and then you will have a nice capillary action into your wire. Once the wire is properly heated, of course. There we go. Hopefully the camera caught that. It looks like you might need some slight adjustment of the camera. That's for sure going to catch it now. Okay. On to our next wire. So I already have all the speaker wire connected. Now moving on to the actual power wires. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your wire and splay it out a bit so that the individual strands are separated. You're going to do this with both sides. Now, I am no expert at soldering, but if you take your time, do it one step at a time, you will have very few, if any, mistakes made. So take your wire like so. You begin to close the strands around each other. You want it to kind of weave in. Give it a nice good twist. Make sure it's nice and tight. And I might need to re-spline that. Need a little bit more on the stereo side. Big shout out to Brian Blake for letting me borrow his Mac Tools wire stripper and crimper because my cheapy knockoff was not doing the job. As you can see, I'm splicing a larger wire to a smaller wire, which does up the difficulty a little bit. Much like splicing two different sizes of rope have the same effect. You want to make sure that none of your ends are off doing any kind of funky thing like this, because when you solder it, that's going to become a solid strand that will make a sharp end that could potentially poke through your insulating covering. So again, get it hot. I'm only touching the solder to the iron to determine when it's hot enough to melt. See, there we go. It also does help with a little bit of the capillary action. Little tips and tricks. And you'll notice I already have my heat shrink on the wire, because you always want to have your heat shrink on there beforehand, or else you're going to have to cut it and do it all over again. Much like flaring a brake line. Whenever you have a flare go perfect, you always forget to put the flare nut on. I know from personal experience. It sucks. So, rinse, lather, repeat. And as you go with this, it does get a little bit harder because the soldered wires do tend to get in the way of soldering the other wires. This is the proper way of doing it, rather than cutting off the goddamn factory plug and then crimping in the stereo. You assholes that do that, I hate you. So does every other mechanic that's come back behind you and undo your mistakes. A general rule for being a good auto technician is make the job easier for the next guy. You know that your repair job will never be permanent and that eventually someone else will have to come back in and do more work. So please, make it easier for the next guy. There we go. And the blowing on it does help cool the solder off rapidly to leave you a nice, strong, durable mechanical connection. Now, getting to the ground, I need to cut this excessively long ground cable because we don't need it. Give myself a little extra to work with there. An extra 1/4 inch never hurt anybody. Also, as you can tell, I'm very much new to doing videos for YouTube. Usually I just do videos of stuff that I do and then it gets posted on YouTube later. Nope, this time I am doing videos specifically for YouTube for my channel. Very soon I will have a Patreon, so if anybody wants to see me do more work on my car or on other people's cars, because I am looking for work as an auto tech, yeah, I would love for you to pay me to do stuff that I love to do. I'd also love to have a camera that actually has a screen on it. Right now I'm using my old GoPro that I got back in 2014. And yeah, it does the job, but it could have better features, like a damn screen. And with all repairs, patience is the key. The mantra I learned in the Army is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Meaning, if you take your time and think about your next step while you're doing your current setup, you won't go wrong. Now, this wire for dash light, I don't have a connection for that, because this wire is my amp signal wire. This is for power antenna, and they are just going to be heat shrunk to cover them. And yeah, we are ready to liquid tape this and heat shrink it. Stand by for the next video.